Okay, so what qualifies? First of all, only buildings in the City of Melbourne qualify. With the 1200 buildings program, we did that research. I quoted some of the numbers, 10%, 42% to you. That was looking at commercial office space only. The legislation actually applies to all rateable land within the municipality of Melbourne that is used for predominantly non-residential purposes. So those 4 words really open up a bunch of other opportunities that we haven't included in the 1200 buildings opportunities, but may exist in different parts of Melbourne, down around Fisherman's Bend, Port Melbourne, some of the industrial areas, because you get industrial opportunities, retail, and other opportunities outside of commercial office buildings. Obviously, residential buildings are excluded, but buildings that are predominantly non-residential are included, pardon me. So it's got to be on rateable land. Your customers have got to be up to date with their payments on their rates, otherwise the city won't like to put more rates onto them that they're possibly not going to collect. And it's got to be used for that predominantly non-residential purposes. This is a program focused on existing buildings. So new buildings are not part of what we're really focusing on here. And we've defined existing buildings as at least 24 months post-occupancy. As we all have found, that some of the opportunities exist in newer buildings, or building tune-ups or retro commissioning are some of the major opportunities that we've envisaged or can expect to happen through this program. We're also, and then the last clause there is essentially a long-winded way of saying that it's subject to an over-leveraged test. So when you go through the financial closing of this, the building owner basically has to make a test that basically says when you add the sum of all the future charges to all the existing taxes, rates and charges and mortgages on the property, that it must not exceed the capital improved value of the building. So that's a test to basically say, if we put this charge in there, are you going to be over leveraged? And of course, one of the points that is also important in there is that multiple charges can exist on the one building. So we've looked at your building, what qualifies a building to use this. It's got to be in the city and those points there. Then we actually go down to project eligibility. And this is where we come into the SMF. We basically will assess your project based upon the previous slide, looking at building eligibility, but then we'll also look at your project eligibility. Basically, we have interpreted that there's 4 major stages of a building's upgrade opportunity, or 4 major buckets. The first one being retro commission, or tuning up a building. It's making sure the building is operating as it should be operating. The second opportunity is retrofit, more capital intensive. You might be looking at base building capital works, building envelope, more capital intensive. The third one is traditional refurbishment opportunities, so moving into some of the cosmetic, carpet, marble foyers, etc. kind of upgrades. And the third one is basically bowl it over and start again, redevelop. This is unapologetically really focused on the first 2 areas, retro commission and retrofit. The third area, refurbishment, we've also encouraged activity to come through this. However, there's not really been too much of a problem with refurbishing existing buildings, as that's a normal process that happens in a building's life cycle anyway. So based upon these, we've created, I suppose, 2 assessment channels for your projects. The first being the common improvements. Basically, this is a list of, they have a good track record of delivering results. So energy efficiency, energy savings, gas savings, as well as water efficiency projects. We've got that list that's available up on the website. Projects that basically go through this application process, that they've done their level 2 audit, they come to us with all their recommendations on this list. Simplify our activity, but we approve it, and then it goes to financial close. The other area which we think actually really focuses on the refurbishment space is our custom improvements. These are basically more complex design-based projects. The example I give is you buy a building, you punch a hole through 7 stories, put a glass roof on top of it and call that an environmental upgrade. Now, I'm sure there are some environmental benefits in there, but if you look at the simple utility payback of that, it might be a 400 or 500 year simple payback. Now, obviously you're making decisions to do that based upon other commercial drivers, not purely for the environmental outcomes. So we would put that through a custom improvements channel and set up an external review panel of experts to assess that and make a recommendation back to us. Essentially, we would expect that recommendation to come back and say yes, no, or partial, and then based upon that recommendation, we'd approve the project to go through. Underpinning all of this is the principle that because the charge can stay with the building, this is a charge on the land on which the building sits, the benefit must also stay with the building. So what we don't encourage is plug loads. You know, a tenant moves out and they've gone through an environmental upgrade agreement, the liability stays on the building, but the benefit disappears with the tenant. That's something that we don't want to see encouraged, because then you have an over-encumbered building and you don't have the benefit there. So basically the approach is it's got to be permanently affixed to the building or nailed down in layman's.